Hey there, Agile Swarm of Bees, and welcome to another episode of Agile Bytes, the podcast sponsored by Integrity Inspired Solutions, where we build software in an agile manner day in and day out. I want to talk about a word we use a lot, and that is the word team. Everyone calls their group of coworkers a team. I've interviewed a lot of software developers because Integrity hires software developers. And whenever I say, did you work on your own or did you work on a team? Everyone says that they've worked on a team. But then as we begin to dig into what the quote unquote team looked like, what we often discover is that people aren't working on teams. They are working with a group of people that they sit with, or they are working with a group of people who they occasionally ask questions to, or have meetings with, or go out to happy hour with, or share a skill set. So it's a group of people that are together in some sense, but they are still operating as a group of individuals. So I wanted to do an episode where I talk about what are some indicators that you have a team, what are some indicators that you have a group of individuals that you may be calling a team, but are not really functionally much different than having a bunch of individuals. And I think this is relevant for a couple of reasons. One is obviously as agile software developers and as productive software developers, it's a team sport. We want to be operating as a team, not a group of mini silos, just individuals like a loose confederacy, right? But the other thing too is as we are moving towards a world where the activity of software development is more and more distributed than it has ever been, more and more teams that are not co-located, then I think these principles become really important. Because if we want to work as a team, we have to figure out how to create these dynamics potentially across geographical locations, time zones, cultural differences, all kinds of things that we have to accommodate. And what I find is that many people, even before COVID, many organizations, they worked like an asynchronous, non-co-located group, even if they all sat together in the same building. So I think these characteristics are important. Now, obviously, I can't hit every single indicator of what makes for a team versus a group of individuals who are working together. So if I miss your favorite thing, I apologize for that. You can, if you're on a platform where you can leave comments. You can come to our website, fill out the form, send me your information. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I would love to hear your thoughts on maybe aspects of being a team that I didn't talk about today that are still very valuable and important. You have a lot of knowledge and I would like to hear it. But I would think of this episode more like areas that maybe you haven't thought critically about before, and it might inspire you to look at other areas of your operations. The first one I'm going to talk about is the daily stand-up, or the daily scrum for our scrum brothers and sisters. I want you to think about that event, assuming that you have that event. And if you do, what does it look like? Is each individual talking about their own work? It used to be a popular way, still is, I suppose, to do the daily stand-up, to go around the room and everyone talks about what they did today, what they did yesterday, and do they have any roadblocks. I would say that if that's what's happening in your stand-ups, you are more likely to have a group of individuals than a team. In fact, when you're in an environment like that, you can almost see people just kind of waiting to give their update. And the thing that they say doesn't really impact anybody else in the room. And that is a prime indicator that you don't have a team. If somebody can say what they're going to say in the daily stand-up and it has no real ramifications for anyone else in the room, like they could have told you one-on-one and it would have had exactly the same effect, you don't have a team. You have a group of individuals. What does a team do in a daily stand-up or a daily scrum? Well, if it's a daily scrum, obviously you're inspecting your progress toward the sprint goal. That's a big part of it. But something that unites both camps is if you have a team, then a team is looking at the work that is currently on the team's plate and then is making tactical decisions that day about who's going to do what. That's what you want to see in your daily stand-ups, is the team looking at the team's work and where we're all at with the team's work and how we're going to allocate our attention and effort and people today in order to move the work forward in a healthy way. You want your team to be making those tactical decisions. I really don't care what you did yesterday, and I only vaguely care about what you as an individual plan to do today. What I care about is, what is the work the team has started? What did we want to accomplish? Are we on track to accomplishing those things? And if there are things that are interfering with it, what changes are we going to make as a team today? Who's going to work on what? The team decides that. Jira doesn't decide that. Our manager doesn't decide that. The team decides that. And so we are making tactical plans on how to attack the day based on the situation that's in front of us. That's what a team does in the daily stand-up. How about the way people are attacking your work items? Maybe you have user stories, or maybe you do product backlog items, PBIs, but how is the team doing that? Is each individual taking their own item? I would say if that's the case, then you probably have a group of individuals. In fact, there are even certain workflow management systems which may even tout themselves as being agile. They rhyme with Hira, that actually mechanically encourage this way of working, this one person per ticket kind of way of working. But that's not the way teams develop software. Software development teams put as many people on the highest priority item as they possibly can. This is actually a primary thing I look for when I go to different organizations to help them out. It's one of the very first things that I can spot to see if we're really working in a team environment, is are multiple people on the same work item. If that's not the case, if everyone has their own individual work item, you probably don't have a team. This can potentially vary depending on what your work items look like, but 95% of the time, that's what that means. What we want is we want the team to own the work items. It's not your work item and my work item. It's the team has this work item in progress. And we're going to put as many people on it as we can. And the people that we put on it may even change from day to day based on what needs to be done and what's going to help that work item move forward. If you think about your work items, your user stories or your PBIs or whatever, probably some work needs to be done on the UI. Probably there's going to be a middle tier with business logic. Probably there's going to be some storage, some persistence things that need to be done. There's going to need to be some work done between the business layer and the storage, maybe your repositories or your ORM. There's going to be various kinds of tests that need to be run, various kinds of documentation that's going to need to be updated. There's all kinds of things that go into delivering a work item. There's no reason why only one person can do those things. So we really want to swarm around the highest priority items. And then when we've put as many people on it as are not going to be stepping on each other's toes or whatever, then we start looking at the second work item. But whenever I see someone's board, I want to see more than one name per thing. I don't want to see one person per card. Come to that, how do your work items get produced? How do they get written? Like, let's say you use user stories. Where do those user stories come from? Well, if you have an individual writing the user stories, you probably don't have a team. Because when we're talking about user stories, the first and most important voice in that is, of course, the actual user. Your user stories come from them. They do not come from a requirements document. They do not come from a business analyst. They come from a user. And as we are thinking about how to articulate the things the user is telling us into their smallest deliverable formats, well, we want to have the voice of a developer and we want to have the voice of a tester in there as well, right? So if you have somebody talk to users and compile what is basically a requirements document, and then an individual puts that into user story format, you are not working as a team. What I want is for the user and the developers and the testers and anyone else involved in producing this value to come away from the table having heard and said the same things, have a common understanding of what this unit of value actually is. And you can only do that by getting the team involved. You cannot do it with a successive series of handoffs to different silos. So who's writing these things? Is it one person, or is the team involved in the units of value that we're actually producing? How about the way you code? I'm probably going to get some angry emails for this, but if you're kind of doing the get flow thing, where you are doing branches per developer or branches per feature, and only one person is working on it, and then you are merging these branches back in, and the PR process is how developers and architects and things like that are interacting around the code. You do not have a team. I'm sorry, you don't. Get flow and the whole, frequent branching scheme, was designed for open source projects where input is coming in from countless unknown sources. You don't know them, you don't trust them, you don't know when their work is going to come in or not, or what portions they may or may not affect. It was specifically designed to protect yourself from all the other individuals who are submitting code. It is not a good workflow for Agile collaborative teams. Okay, we want to do our development very close to the trunk. We want our branches to be very short-lived, and we sure don't want a branch per developer. Now you're institutionalizing silos when you do that, right? So how does your team code? Is it individuals kind of doing their own thing, submitting a PR, and that's when you start doing code reviews and talking about code? Or is your team coding together? Are you coding in pairs? Are you coding in mobs? Are you dynamically shifting the group that is working on that code based on the dynamic needs? Are your code reviews kind of built in because more than one person is looking at the code as it's being produced? That is moving you closer to a team activity. But this highly asynchronous way of working with a lot of long-lived branches and things like that, that's not a team. You are institutionalizing the practice of having individuals working on their own stuff. How about your retrospectives? What's happening in your retrospectives? Now, kind of like the daily stand-ups and daily scrum, a lot of people got their start in retrospectives by going around the room and each individual talking about the things that they thought should be different or the things that they thought should stay the same. You go around, everybody says their subjective takes on what they think should happen. Somebody is maybe keeping a list of those things, and then maybe at the end, that list turns into a list of action items for people to do. Maybe you talk about them in your next retrospective, maybe you don't. And that's even better than the retrospective where individuals just talk about life and then leave, right? So we've all kind of aired our individual grievances. You know, maybe we've had some good conversation, maybe we haven't, and then we all just kind of go away. Right? Well, that's not a team. That's individuals talking about what they like and what they don't like. And I'm not saying there isn't a place for that, but really in a retrospective, our goal is for the team to reflect on the way the team is working and come up with experiments for the team to perform to see if they improve the way the team works. Do you hear the repetition of the word, right? I want my retrospectives to be a place where the team is not a bunch of individuals looking at each other. It's a group of people looking at an objective state of affairs outside of themselves. I want all the individuals to be in the same boat, right? What are the issues that confront the team, right? What do our metrics look like and what do they tell us? What is our biggest constraint, right? What are the different areas that we as a team could improve? What is going to give us the biggest impact and what experiment do we want to run and how will we all be engaged in that experiment? That's what a team does in a retrospective. Just like in a daily stand-up, the team is tactically organizing their day together, dynamically allocating people. People may not work on the same stuff they worked on yesterday. We may switch people completely around, but the team is driving that out so that they can accomplish what the team has been entrusted with. And retrospectives are the same way. The team is looking at the common situations that affect the team, right? One person may not like something and another person may like something. I don't really care so much from a retrospective perspective what individuals want to keep doing or don't want to keep doing. I want to know what's going on with the team. That's why when I run retrospectives, I generally start by looking at the metrics because the metrics happen at the team level and they sort of give the team a picture of what's going on. Doesn't mean it's good, bad. It's not a performance review or anything like that. It's just a time for the team to take a look at the objective situation and then that gets the gears turning. And now we can talk about things like what's our biggest constraint? Where would we get our biggest bang for our buck this time around? And what does the team want to do about it? Speaking of starting retrospectives with metrics, what about your metrics? What metrics do you keep and what level are they at? Are you keeping track of each individual's productivity? You know, their number of check-ins or their lines of code or the number of cards that their name was on that got closed. Is that what you're tracking? Or are your metrics around the group? Are they around the team's delivery rate, the team's flow, what is the team's throughput? What is the team's cycle time? And what are the hitches in the team's flow? Your metrics will also drive behavior. Whatever you measure is going to drive behavior. And if your metrics are oriented toward individual performance, then individuals are going to think about their own performance way more than the team. And you really don't want that. I would much rather have a team, a true team of mediocre developers than a group of superstars who are not a team, because the team is fundamentally the unit that receives requests for value. They are the unit that owns the work. They are the ones that have to deliver. They are the ones that manage the work, and the team is the entity that improves itself. When you think about serving the larger organization really doesn't care that this developer was a little slower than that developer, or that developer had a bad day, or this developer got bombarded in meetings. They don't care about those kinds of things. What they care about is value being delivered in a timely manner, truly valuable things. And they see that at the team level. They care about that value delivery, and it's at the team level that this happens. So I encourage you to go back through your different practices, all the things that relate to the way software development gets done. And there are many more things. We could look at the way people are financially incentivized, right? Do we financially incentivize individual performance, or do we financially incentivize team performance? And what would that look like, right? What kind of radical conversations could we have about that? But go through and look at your practices. Look at the way your group of people are operating. Where I really want you to be is, don't just assume because I have a group of people working from a common backlog that I have a team. That's not what makes for a team. You could have a bunch of people sitting in the same room and not be a team at all. What you are looking for is, are these people operating as a cohesive unit? Do they attack everything that they're doing as a cohesive unit? Or is each individual on the team just kind of figuring out their own work and getting their own work done? And as you look at those things, that will tell you if you really have a team or if you just have a group of individuals that kind of work together. Thanks everyone for listening to Agile Bites. Agile does sometimes bite, but we don't think it always has to. If you enjoyed what you heard today, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you happen to be using. And if you can, leave us a comment, because we'd love to hear your feedback. What things would you like to hear about? What things did you hear that were valuable to you today? You can also head over to integrityinspired.com to sign up to our email list. But that's all for today, folks. We'll see you next time.